Good evening and welcome to MarketSquare. My name is Oluwak Pelubi, where I have with me here one and only Olai Tobabatide. Olai Tobabatide, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kwelumi.
And how are you tonight?
I feel blessed, and it's an honor to be on the show with you today again.
All
And
right.
how are you doing, Kwelumi?
I'm doing good.
Oh, good to know that.
Are you ready?
Yeah, definitely. I'm ready.
All right. Now, the federal government of Nigeria is set to investigate high food prices. Given the way the price of foodstuff has risen, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, has vowed to probe market leaders across the country over exploitative food prices. As of June 2024, Nigeria's inflation rate rose to about 34.19%. And quite notably, the food inflation rate surged to about 40.87% year on year, marking a dramatic increase of about 15.62 percent points from June 2023, when it stood at 25.25%. Now, the focus of this probe is majorly on retailers. Like in the chain of distribution, you have the producers, you have the wholesalers, you have the retailers, and then you have the final consumers. And how many of them are responsible for inflation in consumer goods in the country? So let's talk. I'd like to talk about today. Have you been to the market recently?
Yeah, I think a few weeks ago I was in the market.
Okay, and what was the cost of stuff the last time I went to the market?
I would still say the inflation rate is still eating the roof, actually, because there are still some prices of things that are up the roof, and for some things they are on the cheaper side now, but there's no difference as such.
Okay, but yesterday I was heading to somewhere and I did find a man trying to price yam.
Okay.
And a tuber of yam was sold at 2,500 there. I mean, this was sold by a malam that was pushing his wheelbarrow. I had about maybe five tubers there, and he was selling one tuber for 2,500. And you will rate that man as a retailer because he's trying to sell to a final consumer. So would you say that this increase in the price of foodstuff is directly proportional to the intention of the retailers to increase the price, or do you think is majorly from the source?
Okay, I'll start from the yam seller that you talked about. I think things are getting better because at some point they sold a tuber of yam for 10,000 naira, 8,000 naira. So if the man is selling for 2,500, I think things are on the better side now. But then some of the retailers they decide to inflate the rate of things not because they are selfish, but because of the instability in the market. Now, in a situation whereby they have to restock their market and they know that by the time they go there, there's already inflation rate. Let me put this out there. There was a time that I went to the market to get something. So 5 days, the price of rices at that time was for 2,000 naira. By the time I was going to go back in the next 5 days, it was for 2,500 naira. Now, this problem is not just the retailers that are facing it alone. It's from the source. So when they know that when they buy stuff from the source, from the get-go, it was for 50,000 naira, and they know that by the time they would go back there, it's for 55,000 naira, 100,000 naira. They would want to inflate it. However, there are some retailers that are doing it intentionally in order to extort the people. Now, they blame this on exchange rate and that the fact that their source, they're the ones selling on the high price for them. But I just feel like some of these retailers are doing it because of the situation of things in the country right now, just to extort the people.
Whoa. Well, I know we can't excuse the fact that we have some retailers who are actually taking advantage of the happenings in the country to make more profit for themselves. Mr. Tuji Bello, who is the FCCPC's Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, has said that the Commission is confident that a consensus can be reached on fair product pricing to avoid excessive profiteering at the expense of consumers during these economically challenging times. Now, one of the ways the government has announced to achieve transparency is that supermarkets should visibly display the price of products to shoppers, which will ensure that people know what they want to go in to buy. Customers are aware of costs before contemplating on their purchase, and it's expected that these will prevent situations where prices are only reviewed at the checkout, which will most likely promote fairer trading practices. Let me just have your word on this. What do you think about the government asking supermarkets to display their prices? Have you been in a situation whereby you preferred that the price was visible for you, or maybe you gathered some things and then took it to the counter to make payment and realized that what you gathered, just about 4 items, is about 100,000 naira. Like, let me return one. Have you been in that situation before?
I think I've seen a kid. I was there, We wanted to get a skincare product, and it was for the one was for 3,500, another one was for 1,500. So we decided to go with the one for 1,500 naira. And on getting to the chef, when they were trying to calculate it, they calculated it for 3,000 naira, and then we were shocked because the price we saw on the counter thing was for 1,500. So how come it's not 3,000 naira? And they just did their thing and told us that it was a mistake. But I feel if the buyers can know the price they want to get things, you would be able to manage the fund you have with you, so you can calculate the things you want to get even before getting to the counter for them to calculate, or before getting to the cashier to calculate what you've gotten. So I feel the government is also trying on behalf of the citizens, to make sure that things get better. We're all crying for help. Where there was protest early this month crying for help, telling the government to do things. And I think that the government is trying to help the citizens in order to manage things, and it would also help the people selling things, because it would reduce the embarrassment they get when the buyers get to the cashier to calculate things, and then you're inflating things that I already calculated before I got there, which might be a mistake on their side. It might not be intentional. It might not be that they wanted to add money to what they're selling. It might just be a pure mistake. But then it would help them to reduce embarrassment, and it would also help the buyers to also know this is the amount of things I want to get. So I think the government is doing a great job by doing that.
By asking them to put out the
prices,
so that people can know before they get into their purchases. All right, now very early this week, the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation announced that it has paid 82.3% of insured deposits to customers of a defunct Heritage Bank. Mr. Bashir Nuru, who is the Director of Communication and Public Affairs of the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, made this known recently. So, Olaito, it has been over 2 months since Central Bank of Nigeria revoked the license of Heritage Bank PLC due to what it termed as the commercial bank's inability to improve its financial performance. In fact, I wrote a piece about this on our LinkedIn page, Video Media LinkedIn page. So immediately the NDIC was tasked with the responsibility of liquidating the bank. If you work the math, 82.36% of insured deposits has been paid to customers. It means that 17.64% of insured deposits is yet to be paid. To have paid 82.3% of insured deposits in just about 2 months looks like a positive move. But one will wonder how this was achieved. How do you think the NDIC was able to achieve this within a short period of time?
So, according to Mr. Bashir Nuru, the payment of insured deposits below 5 million commenced within 4 days of the bank's closure. No wonder they could, cover that much amount of money within 2 months. And another thing is that they made use of the bank verification number as a unique identifier to locate depositors' alternate accounts in other banks. So, for people that make use of 2 to 3 banks, they just make use of their BVN to trace their other banks, and they pay into that.
Can imagine already that somebody who has about 4 bank accounts in different banks and is attached to the person's BVN, just by punching on the person's name and most likely the person's BVN there, the person's other account will show, and then the transfer was made possible. But on the 1st of July 2024, the NDIC said discrepancies in BVN at that time delayed payment to some customers. So if you're wondering why you didn't get your own money from the defunct Heritage Bank, it could be that discrepancies around your BVN was responsible for that. A direct payment through BVN linked alternate account without the need for depositors to visit NDIC offices or fill out forms marks a historic shift for the NDIC. Now, the NDIC said the maximum of 5 million would be paid to each depositor of Heritage Bank. And like you know that there are depositors with balances exceeding 5 million naira. And according to the NDIC again, the holders of this account have been paid the initial insured sum of 5 million naira. What that means is that if you have beyond 5 billion naira, those who have beyond 5 million naira in the defunct Heritage Bank have been paid as I speak at the moment, and the remaining money left to be paid. So, for instance, somebody has about 20 million naira in the defunct Heritage Bank and has been paid 5 million naira. The remaining 50 million naira, as stated by the NDIC, will be paid to the person when the assets of Heritage Bank is being liquidated. Liquidated means to convert to cash. It's being liquidated, and then the individuals will get their money. Now, before we go to the third headline, I'd like to just tell you that we have the exchange rate figures on the screen. You must have seen it before now already with regards to pounds, regards to dollars, regards to yuan and other currencies. Nigeria may lose over, this is a serious one now, Nigeria may lose over 100 billion naira due to import duty holiday. The federal government of Nigeria stands the risk of losing about 188.37 billion naira worth of revenue due to a duty waiver granted for staple foods importation in 6 months. The Nigeria Customs Service announced earlier this week. Now, yesterday evening, there was a circular published by the Nigeria Customs Service that the import duty directive, as stated by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, should get into operation from today, the 15th of August 2024. Now, on the 8th of July 2024, the federal government announced a 150-day duty-free import window for food commodities like maize, like brown rice, like wheat, like cow beans through land and sea to ensure a reduction in food inflation in Nigeria. Mr. Adewale Adeni, who is the Controller General of Customs, while analyzing the loss, explained that from 2020 to 2023, the total import of these food items, including beans, maize, rice, and wheat, was about 3.82 trillion naira. Now, still in his words, during this period, these commodities generated about 192 billion naira in customs duty and over 500 billion naira levies paid to the government. So the discussion point is this. Since the circular was published yesterday that the import duty holiday should commence, and seeing how much will be lost by this 6 months holiday, Olaito, do you think this is a worthy sacrifice in terms of the potential revenue that we would have gotten if this import duty holiday wasn't made public?
On the surface, Nigeria has lost a lot of money, but then it only means that the government is trying their possible best to make sure that food is accessible to the citizen. Now, there was a strike, protest early this month where people are protesting against hunger. So I feel this step taken by the government is just to make sure that food are accessible to the people generally. And not did they only do that, they also reached out to the state governors to tell them to make sure that they make available lands for people to cultivate. And as a result of this, it means that we'll have surplus of food in the country since the farmers are also cultivating food. And I think there's also this protection thing coming up that the government are already sent troops to the farms to protect the farmers for while they're working, because they're living in fear. They don't want to die. So the government has made sure that there are troops, the military officers, protecting them while they work on the farm. So this would also make it possible for them to be able to produce a lot of food. And also with the import duty holiday that happened, it would also make it possible for us to import more food so that people can eat and be okay. It would make it easy for us to access food. They say a hungry man is an angry man. So if we can take out the hunger from the people, I think there will be less protests and less troubles.
Okay. Well, I hear that there are some issues happening in Lesotho and even in South Africa. What's happening there?
Let's start with Lesotho. Now, the Basotho, the citizens of Lesotho are also crying for help because of the hunger thing going on in the country. Now, nearly a quarter of its 2 million people are without work, and they live below the poverty line, according to the Development Planning Ministry. Now, around 80% rely on subsistence farming to feed their family. So their main source of food eaten is from farming. So these people are not lazy people that they don't go to the farm to farm and eat. But these people are farming. However, because of the drought, it has been difficult for them to feed. Basotos are currently crying to the government for help. According to one of the farmers, Paul would show us a clip of the farmer talking about the situation of things in the country. Over to you, Paul.
There is going to come a time when only those that can actually grow their own foods will be the only ones eating. So it looks like that time is very close. It is an embarrassment for us as Africans. We've got 70% or 60% of the world's arable land, and yet we're the hungriest. Where food grows naturally, you've got an abundance of land, you've got an abundance of animals roaming. How is that possible?
Just like you said, Nigerians, Africans are blessed with land, but then the drought is making it difficult for us to feed. Now, Malawi, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe have all declared similar disasters, and the situation is equally severe there. We must not also overlook Nigeria's situation either, especially since it's supposed to be the rainy season right here in Nigeria. What do you think could have been done economically in order to prevent this drought?
Well, Lesotho has over 2 million people. As of 2022, when they had the election, as at the last count, rather, it was about over 2 million persons that stay in Lesotho. And the thing about countries and economy in countries is to be able to leverage on the days of plenty. Now, we have many countries in Africa. That don't actually save for the days of famine. I'll give you an example. I read an article in February 2024 about Malawi trying to set up a stable economy for their people. And there are other countries in Africa that don't plan that way. We have, so sometimes you can have natural disasters like we have seen in Kenya over time, where you have flood in most places. In Nigeria, we've also seen flood in many places. So if it's a natural disaster, for instance, then there is little or nothing you can do about it. But the part of the government is to be able to make reservation for days where there could be issues. And just like the man whose video we saw just said, regards to the fact that people should go into the farm, having a farm and people are not really going there to make things happen for themselves. So it's a big issue, and I think nations are beginning to wake up to that reality and seeing that what Nigeria is doing. The other time we mentioned about Nigeria giving free import duty holiday. So that's a thing to also think about. Remember, I asked the question of is this sacrifice worth it? Because if we shouldn't even exceed 150 days of not getting money. We shouldn't actually make that stand, because when we exceed that figure, what happens to us is that our people become reliant on what is being imported, and then our farms will go dry. Our people will not farm. And I like the fact that the government is also putting in security men to be able to guard the farmers in the farm. So what they could have done before now is to safeguard their people, get in as much as possible, not borrow too much from World Bank and IMF, because those guys come with enticing offers. So that's my thought on that.
Okay, so another thing is the government of Lesotho provided 2 million loti for the people, for the vulnerable families that are affected by this drought. But then my question now is, considering that many of these people might not even receive the money, we have corruption everywhere in the country whereby they pay this money and, tell the people in charge to pay the families, but they would not even pay them. What can you say about the situation? What about if these families did not even get the money that the government is trying to, does it even alleviate the problem at hand?
Like I mentioned already, that there are just a little over 2 million people in Lesotho at the moment. And when the government makes this available, it's easy when you don't have a lot of people to be able to track what it is that has been given out. So if you have about 2 persons in a room and you say, go and give them orange or 2 oranges, for instance, you can track. By the time you get into the room, you can track. If just say raise your oranges, and then raise orange if you have one, and they both raise their oranges up there, and then you're able to know how many persons have gotten that. So given that there are not a lot of persons, and if the government can put in systems in place to be able to track the people who get it. The issue with Africa actually generally is not the issue of strategy. What we lack is the issue of release and monitoring. When we release funds, there is no system to be able to track the amount given. And I hope that the government in Lesotho will not make the mistake of many African countries by just doling out money without proper follow-up on if the people who are designed to be able to get the money as much as possible. We see in Nigeria how that we've done cashless transfer to people's account, and we don't track how much money is being sent. Yeah, and we don't even know how many persons get the money. We just see the figures on TV and we believe such. So the government in Lesotho should be able to track the amount given so that the people who deserve to get this get it.
All right, thank you very much. And also the government advised the people to go into planting sorghums and other plants. But looking at the fact that these plants also takes time to grow, don't you think the government is merely aggravating their suffering?
Well, the government at this time knows that we've grown in technology. The world has grown in many ways than one. ensuring that there are ways of speeding up growth at the moment. The world has grown where you can plant something now and then it grows within 2 months. So the world has grown. And if the government is saying, is pushing the people that hard, if you leave things to nature, it will grow steadily. If you jump up, you come down. If you grow up, you stay up. But there's a way to grow up, actually. And then we've seen people do it for chicks, where if you give a particular chick some kind of food, mix some chemicals, that chick will grow very fast, right? So if the government leaves it to nature to define growth, it will only follow the course of nature. 6 months is 6 months, 7 months is 7 months. It won't be less, it will be more. It may be more, but not less. So if the government is asking them to go to the farms to work, the government needs to be able to provide them with necessary chemicals and ingredients, be able to ensure that they're able to plug that into the soil and speed up the growth of whatever plant made. So that's my input on that.
Okay, so over to South Africa's situation. Now, the unemployment rate in South Africa is 8 million. Now, in South Africa, we have about 8 million people that are jobless in South Africa. So earlier this week, the Government Statistics Office reported that South Africa's unemployment rate increased by 0.6 percentage points from 32.9% in Q1 2024 to 33.5% in Q2 2024. Africa's most industrialized economy has struggled to create jobs in recent years due to a long recession and the COVID-19 pandemic that happened in 2020. In Q2 2024, about 16.7 million are unemployed. The sectors which saw the most job decreases include trade, agriculture, and construction, while the manufacturing, social services, and utilities added jobs, actually. In Nigeria, as of September 2023, now we're bringing in Nigeria, we're comparing the cases. 8.6% Nigerian youth are unemployed, and we know its effect on our economy. Unemployment generally has negative impact on the country's economy and also increases crime rates. That is when they give you the excuse of, oh, if I have a job, I won't be stealing. If I have a job, I won't go into kidnapping. I feel some of these people that also does these evil things, they complain about the lack of job. You see graduates riding bikes, plying the road as taxi driver, Uber driver, because there is no job. What can you say about the increase in unemployment rate in South Africa, Pelumi?
Well, South Africa's case for me is quite disturbing, and it shouldn't be, because we've seen that happen again and again. We've seen them drive out strangers. We've seen them make public xenophobia at different times, sending out people even from Nigeria out of South Africa. But to have this happen to South Africa at the moment is quite disturbing. It's a long time coming. It looks like companies are shutting down South Africa, because the reason for unemployment sometimes is not because of more people being given birth to, because before a generation can wipe out another generation, it takes about 18 years minimum. So if you give birth to a child today, before that child can be fit enough to be able to drive out anybody who works in the bank, it takes about 18 years, right? So it's not a case of having more kids. It's a case where you have companies shutting down their companies. Some companies even moving to the remote level to see how that they are able to save more money, believing that working remotely can help them save money. So it's a critical thing happening in South Africa at the moment. We have images from that side being made public to the people, how that, we have so many jobless people in Africa at the moment. So it's quite disturbing.
What do you think the government can do in order to decrease unemployment rates generally in Africa?
Well, the government has a big role to play. What the government can do is to give investors the reason to come in and invest. When you make your country a safe haven for people, they will want to come there. What the government in Nigeria has done, which is quite commendable, is to set up structures, give, for instance, we've seen tax holiday. Somebody who has, for instance, the tax holiday we're talking about now, the beauty about tax holiday is that, import duty holiday rather, is that importers will not pay anything to the government, but ensure that by the time they sell the good to the country, they sell it for a cheaper amount, which then ensures that they can even engage more people to work for them. So imagine how many persons will get employed within the next 150 days because of what the government has done, right? Because of what the government has done. So it's a good thing that the government is doing that in Nigeria, trying to, first of all, I would say to the governments in Africa, you want to set up structures to ensure that there's tax holiday where you have to ensure that the investors in your country at the moment enjoy some level of benefit in terms of not paying tax. Number two is to give room for people who want to come in and invest. By that, I mean telling them that for the next 1 year of you invest in our country, you will not pay tax. We prefer that you pay the people. You pay the people working in this country, our people working in your country, this amount of money instead of you paying tax to us. Something else to do is also to make the environment conducive. We've seen that although just the only case in Nigeria that seems to be that seems not to go in line is Aliko Dangote's case that ensures that Aliko Dangote is going through a lot. I learned that man is now slimmer. I hope he checks his BP every day. Right? But apart from that, the government is supposed to be able to create an environment that is conducive for the people. So there are 3 things the government can do to make this even better.
Thank you for pitching in your advice. And that will be all on today's episode of MarketSquare. Thank you for joining us.
Do want to follow us on all our social media platforms, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, especially on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and come on, click on the notification bell.
Yeah, it's not that difficult. You're not paying.
Just touch it and that's you're good. And also TikTok, on LinkedIn, you'll find our content there as well. My name is Olua Pelubi Awe. Before you say your name, I know you want to say you're ready to say your name. I'd like to give a shout out to Olaito Adebayo. Olaito Adebayo, thank you for your contribution. And also to our producer, Paul, thank you for your contribution. Yeah. Your name
and since you said I should mention my name last, and my name is Olaito Babatunde. See you on the next one.
Yeah, see you on the next one.